The Prime Minister is trying to rebuild relations with Donald Trump.
Yes, the Foreign Secretary's position, David Lammy that is under threat as he called the President-elect a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, and that was just for starters.
Totally normal. These comments could now put some pressure on the UK-US special relationship, but Downing Street says he'll stay in his position until at least the next election.
Well, it's also been reported that Donald Trump is set to stop Britain's deal to give away the Chagos Islands when he returns to the White House. That was following criticism, severe criticism, from Republicans on the Hill.
OK, well, joining us now is political editor Christopher Hope, our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, thank you very much for joining us on this one. Yes, so could it be that actually Donald Trump in the White House, this could mean that we get the Chagos Islands back?
Yeah, we still have them, of course, until the handover deal is signed, and it's not yet signed. So what happened here is the Truss government, the Tory government, started talks about handing over the Chagos Islands, the sovereignty of them, to Mauritius next door, because we'd lost, there was a vote in the UN, we lost that, we'd lost some court cases, and increasingly London felt it was impossible to hang on to it. At the heart of the problem, though, is Diego Garcia, this military base, which is a real, which the US want to hang on to, but under the deal we would give back control and sovereignty of the base after 100 years. Now, Joe Biden approved this deal, but there's rumblings, we think, that Donald Trump will not agree, and because the treaty is not yet signed, it won't be signed till early next year, it'll be on his watch when it finally gets done. So one person who's been taking up the fight on this issue and concerned about it is our colleague and the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, and I asked him last night on his show on GB News about the issue of the Chagos Islands.
All I can tell you is that I've spoken to people in the military here, I've spoken to people close to the incoming Trump administration, and there are deep concerns about a Mauritian government that is moving a long way to the left, that doesn't appear to like America very much, that is getting closer to China, even though it's not part officially of the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's all well and good saying there's a lease deal, but hey, we heard there was a lease deal on democracy in Hong Kong, and look what's happened to that. And I think this will be a source of great concern for the Americans. Would have been very difficult to do the Gulf War, very difficult to do the Iraq War without Diego Garcia. It is that and Guam are the only real assets America's got in that whole part of the world. It is something that is very important. It is something that will be discussed, obviously, and of course I have my own view on that.
Nigel Farage last night talking to GB News when I was presenting his show. Now, the deal was signed on October the 3rd. The Chagos Islands, I should say, there are a cluster of around 60 islands in the Indian Ocean. They are of vital geopolitical importance, and that's what Nigel Farage was alluding to, both to the UK and the US. Now, there's a group called Chagosian Voices, and I've been in touch with them for your show, Tom and Emily. They are very keen to speak to Nigel Farage. They've released videos of people who were forcibly removed from those islands by the UK back in the late 60s. They all live around Gatwick area. They got off the plane and stayed in that area. They want to go back. And increasingly, I think their voice is the ones which might be heard more and more. And the reason why we don't have any debate on sovereignty over Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands is because the people living there don't want it. Well, the Chagosians who are removed from these islands also don't want to be removed from the islands by the UK, and it may just be they get their own way, because Nigel Farage knows the mind of Donald Trump more than most.
This is a fascinating issue, of course, because it was one of these early sort of giveaways that the new government sort of signed up to, perhaps thinking that actually this would help their relations with the United States. I mean, it did seem it was done in conjunction with the Democrat administration in the United States, involving this 100-year lease deal for the base, almost as if they were worried that the islands would be taken away at a UN level or something, so wanted to secure that base. But perhaps the new Trump administration cares less for advisory votes at the United Nations than the previous administration did. I mean, this really could change all of those assumptions.
Well, it's definitely up in the air, and it will need to be signed off by the new US president. He's due to be sworn as that in that role on January the 20th, and after that, everything's in play. So I think the deal they agreed and announced on October the 3rd, before elections in Mauritius, which many attacked, particularly on the Tory side. Even though the Tory government started the talks, their contention is they never meant them to get anywhere. They did that almost to humour Mauritius and allow it to carry on and run into the sand, as it were. So no deal was expected. I mean, it looks, for many, giving away sovereignty over any parts of the world is contentious. And when you have a military base so important for refuelling nuclear submarines as much as anything else, UK nuclear submarines, that's why I think so many in Britain might support Trump if he vetoes this deal.
Thank you very much, Christopher Hope, our political editor. Very interesting. Would it be a bit embarrassing for Starmer and David Lammy if Donald Trump were to just say, nope, not happening?
Well, it's the bonkers thing about it all. Why would it be embarrassing for the British government to maintain British territory?
Because they said they're giving it away.
Why is that the embarrassing option here? I mean, I completely agree with you. It would be embarrassing for the government, but doesn't that just explain how through the looking glass we have got to now? Like, what a point we have reached as a country where the embarrassing option is maintaining your territorial integrity as a country, and the less embarrassing option is literally giving away territory. I mean, what?
How far we've fallen, Tommy. How far we've fallen. Well, at least we're here to bring you some positivity. Keir Starmer, he's in Budapest today for the European Community Summit. He's expected to sign some deals with several Balkan countries as part of his plans to smash the gangs.
Well, this comes as Europe continues to digest the news that Donald Trump will soon be returning to the White House and what that will mean for this continent.
Yes, it's very interesting, the different reactions from the different European leaders. But for more reaction, we can now speak to GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. Of course, there's a big political elephant in the room, which, of course, is Donald Trump's election in the United States. But what was on the agenda in terms of migration, and what exactly is going to be agreed?
Well, as far as Sir Keir Starmer is concerned, he, of course, really wants this summit to focus on the issue of illegal migration. This is the government's Small Boats Week, but really it's a week in which we are just one small boatload away from 32,000 migrants having crossed illegally from France in small boats this year, compared with 29,437 the year before. So we're less than a fortnight after we overtook the number who'd crossed for the whole of last year. So far this year, we're now ticking up towards 32,000. More than 300 arrived yesterday. Today, again, another 100 have arrived, and our producer down in Kent saying there's every possibility that on the high tide, the evening tide, that more will come across because conditions are favourable in the Channel at the moment. But it's not all via the sort of the Channel, or at least the Mediterranean, from a European perspective, that Sir Keir Starmer is focused on as he tries to get them enthused about the message of going after the organised people smugglers and smashing the gangs. There are these land routes as well, particularly in through the Balkan routes, and that's why he's signing this deal with North Macedonia, Serbia and Kosovo, in the hope that they can strengthen the criminal investigations that take place to dismantle the people smugglers further uproot, to stop the people smugglers getting these migrants into Europe in the first place. But really, it's going to be so difficult, isn't it, to try to get minds focused on the concerns over migration when everyone at that summit will just want to focus on Donald Trump and what a new presidency from Donald Trump will mean, particularly for European security. Oh, to be a fly on the wall.
Yes, Mark. 32,000 you say we're just coming up to this year. How much is that costing the taxpayer? Do we know?
Well, billions. Around about 7 billion every year in accommodation alone, we know that it's about 7 to 8 million a day in hotel accommodation for these people when they come across, because they have to be housed somewhere, to the point, of course, where the government has had to put a rapid handbrake turn on its plans to end the use of hotels for migrants. They're now in negotiations with 2 more hotel chains to try to acquire more hotels to put these people coming across, because we have had a significant surge, and a surge that is going to continue probably at least by the end of this month, I would say, up to 35,000 and maybe 40,000 by the end of the year. That is a very significant number when you compare it to the 29,500 last year. Okay, not as many as the 45,000 the year before, which was an extraordinary year. But as I say, there's still the better part of 2 months to go. So who knows just how many more will come across. There are plenty waiting there. Our producer in Kent has told us, speaking to his contacts in France, that there are thousands of people not just lined up in northern France in the makeshift camps from Dunkirk down to Calais and even down to Boulogne, but further inland, where they wait until it's their turn to take a boat across to the UK, and then they're shipped to the coastline to meet up with that boat that usually comes in by road from Germany.
OK, well, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, thanks so much for talking through the European Political Community Summit there in Budapest.
It's very difficult, isn't it? We talk about cooperation, and of course this is a global issue and it's a European crisis for many countries, but countries will fundamentally act in their own interests, and they won't put British interests first when it comes to solving this crisis.
But
if they can sort their border, great. They're not going to put all their resources into stopping the flow into our country, are they? In fact, that would be removing the problem from their shores.
Right, and also it does seem to be the case that we've elected a government that scrapped an offshore scheme with Rwanda just at the time that 15 European countries are looking at sort of this African processing scheme. Ursula von der Leyen's just got a second term secured as European Commission President. Her European party, the European People's Party, has been campaigning on issues like African country processing. Giorgia Meloni is doing her deal with Albania in terms of processing people there. Then you've got Viktor Orban, who's hosting this summit. He's not exactly a sort of wilting daisy on this issue either.
Well, he's just walls up, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's just walls up and, control those borders at all costs.